Welcome everyone once again to the Spanish Breakfast Show live on YouTooSpain. I'm Skatz, and in today's show with my expert guest Chris from Upsticks, we're going to be taking you through 4 common scenarios for couples applying for residency in Spain when one is an EU citizen and the other is a non-EU citizen. And sometimes it's the EU citizen who's going to be working, sometimes it's the non-EU citizen, or sometimes it's both. What happens there and what happens if they have children with them, all will become clear. So welcome to YouTube. We've got lots of information for you today, so grab a cuppa and stick around to the very end because we always have extra information there. As usual, ask your questions in the live chat or in the comments below and we'll get you all of the answers you need. And one final thing before we begin, thanks to everyone who's been buying our hoodies and t-shirts and mugs and phone cases from the merchandise page or supporting the channel through our Patreon page. That all helps us to help you, so thank you for that. All the links are in the video description below. And if any of you are looking for apostille services, you can get a discount by quoting the code that's in the description below, courtesy of Apostille Services UK. Let us know how that goes. So, without further ado, let's meet our guest for the day. It's Chris from Upsticks. Hola, Chris.
Hola, good morning.
How are you doing?
Yes, all good, very good. Busy as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a hectic day, so we'll move straight on because you've got to be away at 11 Spanish time. So let's see these 4 different scenarios. Each of them demand a slightly different approach to getting your residency, but in each situation, one of them is EU and the other non-EU or third country national, as we call them. And we'll assume for now that all of our couples are married. But if anyone wants to know about what to do if you're not married, then just ask. So there we go. Yeah. First imaginary couple then is an EU citizen who's going to be working in Spain, and their non-EU partner won't be working, so they will be a dependent. Take us through the process.
Yeah, so first of all, as you know, the first thing would be that the first thing to explain is that you can actually do this obviously within Spain. So we talk quite a lot about visas and stuff that you get with consulates, etc. But if there's an EU citizen and a third country national, a very common demographic at the moment, evidently, is Irish and British. That can be done in Spain. So when you enter Spain, obviously the third country national will be entering effectively on a tourist visa. But once you're here, you can start the process of getting the residency. Mm-hmm. So to start with, the person who's working, the EU citizen. So we're assuming that they're probably self-employed or they're going to get a job here or something like
that. Yes,
one
of those two, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So obviously they would need to get their residency first. And as you very well know, sometimes a little bit of a chicken and egg situation regarding the NIE number, because as a non-resident, you can get an NIE number if you intend to do some sort of non-resident act, like buy a house or buy a car for you to keep at your house here or something like that. But quite often it's the scenario where the EU citizen needs the work or the contract to start or to register as autonomo before they can get their residency, which means you have to get an NIE number first. Normally you'd get assigned an NIE number with your residency, but if you don't meet the conditions for the residency, you have to get that first. Then complete whatever you need to complete, like registering as autonomo or getting your job and using the NIE to get a social security number, and then going through the residency registration process. So the residency registration process, evidently, when you meet the criteria, you go to the police, you get your residency on the day. And then once you have your residency, you can start the process of then registering your third country national dependent. That's slightly different.
So that's immediately then? You can do that immediately?
Yeah, you can do that immediately. You can do that at the moment you've got your green card in your hand and you're a resident, you can do that immediately. It's good if before this you can get registered, if you're coming here to live permanently, if you could get registered on the Padron together. Again, sometimes that's not always possible until one of the EU citizen has got their residency, depending on the criteria of the town hall. I mean, they literally are seen on Facebook actually this week that there are some town halls who are we're letting people register with 3-month contracts on the Padron, which I've never heard of before. And then here in Malaga, for example, some will let you with 6 months plus, some in demand of long term. So it really depends. So it's always a good idea, if possible, before you start applying for the third country nationals residency to get signed on the Padron. Certainly, once the EU citizen has got their residency in place, then you definitely need to go and get signed on. And then with everything you have in place, so your EU citizen will be will have then either a job or be registered as self-employed autonomo. You'll be registered living together, and then if we're assuming you're married, so you'll need a marriage certificate. If you got married outside the EU, then that marriage certificate will have to carry either a legalization, or if the country where you got married is part of the Hague Apostille agreement, then you need to have the marriage certificate legalized for the Hague Apostille, and evidently have a translation as well. All of that would need to be submitted to immigration. So you can't do this at the extranjería. It's very similar to the process of people who are registering within the withdrawal agreement. You have to make an application to immigration. So you can either do that yourself at an office, or you can do it on the government platform. And then once they assess it, they come back with the resolution, which basically a resolution is a document that says, yay, you can now live here with your EU partner, her EU husband or wife. And with that resolution, you go to the extranjería and you have to go through the same process as everybody with the withdrawal agreement have been going through. And now everybody who's got non-lucrative visas go through the same process, where you have to go and give what they call the toma de huella, so the taking of the fingerprint, and you take your resolution along with the various taxes, and then 45 days later you'll get a card which says you're an EU family member, basically.
Great stuff. So it can be a long process. I mean, one thing that's happened to us in this particular town, I signed on to the Padron probably a week and a half ago, and they said, we'll get back to you within a month and give you the certificate. So that these kind of things can slow the process down. Some places you get it within, straight away or in a day or two, don't you?
That's correct, and it can be long. The Padron can take time, and also immigration. There's no rhyme or reason really that they are supposed to respond within 90 days, because there's this thing where if they haven't responded within 90 days, they call it silencio administrativo. So you can consider that your application is null and void, but that never happens. But they do take up to the 90 days to respond at times. And then at times we get them back in 48 hours. So you can give them a nudge. They do have an email address where you can nudge them, and at the moment, what we're seeing is, I don't know if it's because we're coming up to Christmas, we had after summer, the cards, the TIE cards themselves, the actual cards, were coming out very quickly, within 30 days. And now, I mean, we had some the other day where we lined up lots of clients to go, and they weren't there after 35 days. So a few angry people then that day. But so we had to put the protocol back now to 45 days, except the police stations are still saying 30 days and in some places, and we're having to tell people they're not telling the truth, it's 45. So but all of that, the reason I'm saying that is because if you have travel plans, evidently it's tough. While that third country national is in that period of they can stay here because they've got an application in place, but it might go over their 90-day period. It's not a good idea to be traveling until that's been resolved. So that's the main problem that people sort of have, is you really do have to be here, and if you have got travel plans out of your 90 days that you're allowed as a third country national, then it can get slightly complicated if you're still waiting for your resolution.
Okay, so is that everything for the first couple? Is that all we need to know there?
So yeah, I was just gonna, what I was thinking about, that's what this is my TIE card, but that's where it would reflect at the top there that you are, but mine says I'm a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement. If you're a partner of an EU citizen and third country national, it actually says it there on the top.
Okay,
So,
that's good to
under
know.
observations.
So I'll just say hello to everybody on the screen. Hello, Ghazi. Hello, Peter Urquhart, Alan Lackenby. Hello, Jurudy Organics. And there we go. So yes, hello to all of you. No questions so far. It's all just saying hello and good morning to you. So we'll move on to our second couple. The second couple of the reverse situation. So it's the non-EU citizen who's going to be the one doing the working. So is that, do they have to apply first? So what's the process there?
No, so if it's a non-EU citizen and it's an EU citizen, and let's just say the non-EU citizen is going to be working when they're here, the EU citizen would still need to get residency first. So
Okay.
the non-EU citizen doesn't have permission to work or even declare that they're working until they have their status on the back of their EU partner. So in that case, what you'll find is, and we spoke about the EU citizen getting residency first by using autonomo or a job contract, which covers your income and healthcare. So you know the main principles of all residency, and always go back to it. Obviously, there's various different nuances depending on how you're getting residencies and visas and stuff. But the two main principles, well, the three main principles are income, money, can you support yourself, and healthcare, and also where you're going to live. So with the most basic concept of that is an EU residency, because they're the three things that you have to present when you go to an EU residency application. So if we've got a non-working EU citizen, then they'll have to, instead of presenting a work contract and documents to prove that they're covered under the social security system here, actually a work contract covers both of those, and if you're autonomo, then you get a certificate which proves that you're registered. Then they would have to prove they're not working either private healthcare, or they've got access to an EU convenio, like an S1 form. Okay, so that proves your healthcare. And then whichever way they're going to support themselves financially to get that EU residency, whether it be savings in the bank, income from pensions, maybe they've given up work or something. Whichever way, you know, the many scenarios you're going to prove that you can financially support yourself, you'd have to get your residency that way first. Then you have to repeat the process for your partner, who's a non-EU citizen, by applying to immigration. And instead of presenting a work contract or autonomo documentation, you'd be presenting that you have healthcare for that person. So they would have to initially have private healthcare, whatever happens, or be covered by an S1. But then if they've got an S1, they'd be retired, so they wouldn't be working. So scrap that. So they'd need private healthcare. And you'd need sufficient funds to support that non-EU family member for the application. Then once they get approved and they've been through, again, the process of the fingerprinting and getting their TIE card, then that card gives them permission to work.
Okay, so it can be that again can be quite a long process, because if it's 45 days to get your TIE card right at the end of it, and you just can't work before then, so couples really need to make sure they've got enough funds to cover that initial, what could be 3 months. Yeah,
or more. More. By the time you've got an EU residency, I mean, depending your appointment dependent on the EU residencies, and that one thing that's very important to mention is that obviously for third country nationals and the process of doing the fingerprints, you can go to any police station in your province. So quite often when we've been doing, depending on people's time constraints and stuff, I mean, I've been up to Ronda on an emergency appointment for somebody who needed just to get the process. And I was like, the only appointment available was Ronda, right, let's go. Whereas an EU citizen can only go to their local extranjeria. So they're very strict on that as well. So if you're Malaga's quite good, because Malaga broadly covers a lot of places. But like for yourself, in Compita, where you are, it's Torre del Mar, and they're a lot more limited with their appointments, for example. Marbella is only Marbella. They can be limited. So, Estepona covers a massive an area. But if you're booking, we're booking for February now next year for Estepona. So, you really whereas sometimes in Malaga they come at the next day. So that could be the first initial delay. Evidently, the padron. Although depending on which office you go to, they ask for a padron or they don't. For an EU citizen, you can get away with it in Malaga without a padron, but we always advise if you're going to be here, just get a padron, because the day that you go about when they'll ask. Then other places do ask and won't give you a residency until you get a padron. And again, Estepona is a great example, because Estepona is very similar to Compton. You go and register for your padron, and it takes 2 weeks, and etc. So that's the delays that you can. It isn't a quick process, no.
Okay, we have a question here that is relevant to, I think, the first couple from Jane Perks. Hi, I was wondering if there is a difference if an EU spouse is working remotely with a UK-based business.
Living in Spain, but working remotely as a digital nomad. No, you would have to here evidently prove whatever structure so when you become resident here, then the norm is that you become a fiscal resident. Okay, at the end of the first year, you may have to. As I say, we can't talk too much about tax. I'm not a tax advisor, but at some point you'd have a fiscal structure, and which, however you earn your money, is how you would need to prove to the government that you can support yourself and your partner. We've done it in the past where, and this is quite a common question within the withdrawal agreement towards the end, and we've also had it recently with this exact scenario we're talking about, where they've come back and they've had bank deposits which have proven money, but they've come back and asked for what is the fiscal status in the current year of origin, for example. So we've submitted things like P60s, contracts, etc. There was one scenario where we had a self-employed person in the UK who was coming here to live. They was going to convert to an autonomo here, but they wanted to know the fiscal status from where he came from. And within the self-employed tax return, and UK tax advisor, I'll tell you a lot better than me, but there was his tax advisor told me something like page 27 or something showed his annual return, his registration, whatever. We had that translated, and they were happy with that. So that's fine. You can do that. The only thing is, evidently, if you're not working in Spain, you wouldn't be covered under the Social Security healthcare system, so you might find that whatever structure you have to earn money outside of Spain, which could be perfectly legal, you have to be covered here by private healthcare.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer. I hope that's everything you needed to know, Jane. That we'll move quickly on because it's rapidly approaching 11 with 10 minutes to go, and we still have about 5 questions from people on the Facebook groups. So if both of the couples are going to be working, what's the difference there?
Basically, the scenario is very similar to what we've spoken about in the first 2 scenarios, but the third country, the non-EU citizen, would have to wait to get their residency before they can start. So you literally would be, the EU citizen would have to get themselves completely lined up and then get their autonomo work in place. Then you would apply, once that person's got all of that in place, to immigration, proving evidently the relationship using a marriage certificate, and as we've spoken about before. And then once the approval came through, well, then the non-EU citizen can start working as soon as they've got. What they can do is, as soon as the approval comes through and you have the fingerprint Toma de Huella appointment, you'll get a resguardo, which I should have one here, and I don't. I'm very sorry. And using that resguardo, you can start registering your autonomy, because that is proof that you've got the authorization there.
Brilliant. Okay.
And
then
what you can do also is, at that point, so a third country national who's going to be working but needs the permission to work off the back of their EU spouse doesn't really need to get an NI number beforehand, because they'll get issued one with their resolution. And there's no real reason to start getting one beforehand. So once you get that resolution, even if you're waiting for your fingerprint appointment to get the permission to work, you can still get that NIE number, speak to your HESTO and say, right, this is get yourself lined up, ready to go, ready to hit the button. So as soon as you get that resguardo in your hand, you can get going.
A lot of this seems to be about making sure you're prepared for that moment when you can actually hit the button on the next part of the process, isn't it? You can have everything lined up, and then occasionally everything can move backwards if something's delayed, and then you have to kind of reset the button, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's good. Well, and the fourth and final imaginary couple have children. I guess this could relate to any of the other three couples. How does that affect your residency process if you've got young dependents?
Right. So first of all, you, depending on what the status of the dependents are, so if they're EU or non-EU, the process is different. So we've actually had both scenarios. So we've had scenarios where we've had EU with EU dependents and non-EU husband in this scenario. And in that scenario, all the children and the EU citizen go together to get their residency. Okay, so they get that in one day. We'd normally put them together. And at that point, the EU citizen has to prove their back to the principles of residency, income, healthcare, and at this point, the relationships. So you'd need birth certificates, apostilles. You can give a shout to apostille people now if you like. They can help us. And the translation of the birth certificate. Now, if the children are non-EU, then they go through the same process as a non-EU citizen. So first of all, the EU citizen registers, and then all the rest of the family have to then apply to immigration to get their resolution. And that can take a while. Again, if you're looking at schools and stuff like that, and you need NIE numbers for schools, sometimes schools don't understand the paperwork. So certainly, you've got to factor in 3 or 4 months, for this sometimes. More so for public schools, slightly more complicated to get in if you haven't got documentation than private schools, evidently. But yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some schools are taking, you have to, some of them were saying, I saw on Facebook, if you want for next year, you need to apply in March, but no point asking them before March. They just say, come back in March. And that can be a bit scary for people who are going, but I'm moving in April. I need to guarantee that my kids are going to be able to go to school. Otherwise, they're going to miss out on part of a year's education. But there's not a lot you can do sometimes.
You might have a show there. I have to hold my hands up and say my wife does all the school paperwork, and sometimes it looks more scarier than an unlimited visa. The platform, the WTF platform has moved on quite well. There's a lot of digital stuff, and there's an application they have on the phone and stuff like that. But there might be a show there on talking about school registrations, because honestly, she just tells me to sign stuff, and I'm like, yeah, brilliant.
We'll have Laura on the show. We'll have Laura on the show one day. She can talk about that.
Schools.
Yeah, perfect. Now I'll come back to this question in a moment. Craconification. That's a nice name. We'll go to some of the questions from Facebook. Let's see. We'll go to this one first. This is a much more general question. Several questions actually. Number 5. Here it is. Here's another question. This scenario, it's an EU, non-EU couple with the latter piggybacking on the former's residencies. I've heard it said you need to carry a marriage certificate around with you. Is that the case?
Not once you've got the residency, no.
Is that maybe if you're traveling? Is that what you have to do?
Yeah, I think there might be. Yeah, so you wouldn't. I mean, what I would say to that is, so if you're, you don't have to carry a marriage certificate around with you, but if you are, I would say that if you want to try and get the EU, the non-EU application in well before the 90 days, so you've got the application there. And then if you are traveling together and you have to travel over the 90-day period, then, with your EU partner, then yeah, it can't harm to have your marriage certificate on you, plus the proof that you're applying for residency as their dependent, but as a rule in Spain, you don't have to carry it around in your pocket, no.
that kind of covers the other questions. Actually, number 3, it says, do the couple have to be joined at the hip? presume that's when you're traveling, just to show that if you get challenged and it's outside the 90 days, then that's the only time we need that.
Yeah, again, if you've got an application in, and you've got proof of that, it can't harm, keeping that with you. If you were to get stopped by the national police or something, but no, you'd have to be joined at the hip.
Yeah. And does the non-EU partner get a residency document in his or her own right? That's a yes, isn't it? Yeah. That's a quick one.
TIE card. So you'll get a TIE card under 5 years with permission to work, and then, that's
And what happens if the question 5 on here is this? What's the situation if for the non-EU partner, if God forbid the EU partner were to pass?
That's a very good question. I've never dealt with that scenario, but if it's in so after 5 years, your EU dependency on that person will then convert to a permanent residence certificate. So we'll work backwards with this one. I've just done one actually recently where the person who got the status off the back of an EU spouse, and this may answer our question here, and they divorced. But because they divorced after the permanent residency, it was fine. He's been able to renew his permanent residency, although they're divorced. In fact, actually applied to immigration to have the EU status, family member status taken off, because he's a permanent resident. Now he's just a permanent resident in Spain. So if it was a case of somebody passed away and you'd already converted to permanent resident, then that wouldn't be a problem. If you are still in the temporary residence period, I would imagine, as I've never done this before, thank God, but what you would have to do you would have to prove how you got your status when you come to renew your card for your permanent residency, which would have been off the back of the EU partner who suddenly passed, and just prove that they've passed, but you still live here. Mm-hmm. So if it was us approaching that scenario, I would be looking for the proof, evidently, that the EU person has sadly passed, and then the proof that you can still independently financially support yourself. You've got your healthcare in place, and it's not your fault that someone's passed, and you'd have a death certificate and present that for your permanent residence. Mm-hmm.
So we're actually reaching 11 o'clock, and we've got about 6 more questions to answer. How shall we handle this?
Let's do some. I'm so sorry, I've got to shoot off. It's just one of those things.
Okay, we'll get to Crackinification. Irish national, UK wife, both retired, was hoping to spend 6 to 12 months travelling in a motorhome before deciding where to settle. What could we do about an address for residency during this time?
Oh, that's a good question again. That's a tough one. You might come up against resistance, to be honest. You would need a permanent address. Mm-hmm. It's one of those where that's what we call like a grey scale. So yeah, there's a lot of paperwork with either do or don't ask for, and it's always better to have a padron if possible. If that isn't a scenario, then we would declare that's the scenario to immigration. So the EU person should maybe be able to get their residency without a padron. We always advise it's a good idea to have one, but as I said, there's scenarios where, in certain areas, depending where you go, they don't ask for them. But when they come to register the third country national, we would definitely have to say, look, the scenario is as they live together, and you can write what you like in an escrito to immigration. What you like, explain the scenario, explain whatever you want to, and put it to them. If they dig their heels in and say you need a padron, you'd have to get a permanent address. They may just turn around and accept it and say no. There you go, that's your residence.
Okay, great. Next one from Alan. Hello, Alan. When attending your appointment for residency in the UK as a married couple on a non-lucrative visa, can you attend together or is it separately? The reason I ask is my wife has dyslexia and learning problems.
Right, at the consulates this happens a lot where they give you separate appointments, but if you request your appointments back to back, they let you in together.
Great. That was quick. Okay, next question then. We're zipping through these. And we'll have Karen. So moving to Spain, I know what we need to do to sort out our driving licenses. We also have motorcycle licenses. This is not about the subject of the day, but do we need to retake tests? I think the answer is
No,
Yeah,
if it's an E, so we'll push the UK licenses aside because we know at the moment what the scenario is with those. But if you're exchanging an EU license, then you should get your motorcycle license on that. Okay, so that's one of the categories which is exchangeable. And on the DGT website, actually, I'll send you the link as well, Skatz. There's actually a really good list of what you can exchange and countries with convenios, but you should get a motorcycle license. Now, evidently, if you're a third country national, there's no convenio between your country and Spain, then you would have to retake a car test and a bike test if there's no agreement.
right. Great. Question 3. This is from Martin Williamson. Let's see. We're hoping to move to Andalusia next September-ish. My partner and I are not married. However, we've been living together for 11 years. We have a 10-year-old daughter together. Will we have to apply separately for the non-lucrative visa?
Again, that's probably there's a whole show's worth there. But yeah, I mean, if you're unmarried, then it's a lot tougher to apply, and it's all down to the fact that if you need to gain from the financial reduction for being a beneficiary of somebody, it's a lot tougher to prove that if you haven't got a marriage certificate, that you can benefit from that. So what I mean is that obviously we know for an individual applicant, you need 400% EPREM. For a couple and a child, it would be 600% because it would be 400 plus 100 plus 100. Now, if you've got a child together, that's a great link to get that, shall we say, beneficiary's discount. And we've actually done this in Spain, where we've used the child as the bridge for somebody to get EU residency, even though they weren't as a dependent, even though they weren't married. But they're slightly more stricter with non-lucrative visas, I have to say. You know, so yeah, it's all about the financials in that respect. If you have to depend on the reduction being a dependent, then it's a lot tougher to prove if you haven't got a marriage certificate. It's not impossible, but you'd have to present stuff to prove that you have been together for 11 years, and evidently the daughter is going to help because you've got that birth certificate. Yeah.
And if you've got a daughter, a child who's only 10, then that presumably means you're quite a lot younger than retirement age, and that is proving to be more difficult these days to get a non-lucrative visa because you need to prove that you're definitely not going to work.
You do 100%. Okay, it's the question. It's fortunately we're going through loads of scenarios at the moment, and the more it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And they were very insistent when I went to London not so long ago. They said they have to prove that they can survive without working, and obviously, yeah. So,
yeah, great. Now the other 2 questions that I've got on here, I can answer. And I think I answered them on the Facebook groups, so I'll answer those after you've gone. I'll let you go because you have to get Raoul to his golf.
I do. Then we've got a bit of a hectic day since we're moving today as well. So
yeah, well, good luck with that. And yeah.
First time in 8 years that we've moved, so it's going to be hectic. But anyway, well, listen, I'm so sorry I've got to shoot off, but I hope I've answered all the questions. And if anybody's got any other questions, then please just let me know. I'll be happy to answer them afterwards.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll put them in the comments below, everybody, and I'll get them to Chris for you. Okay. So everybody wave goodbye to Chris and have a good day. Don't get too stressed.
I won't. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye. Okay, everybody. Yes, stick around. There's still these last few questions. We'll get one from Elaine here. I did answer it on Facebook, but in case any of you need the answer, I've tried now for 6 months to get an appointment for the non-lucrative visa. They do not reply, and I'm unable to request an appointment at the consulate, beginning to give up now due to lack of communication. And I said to Elaine, I would try again because she told me that this is from the London embassy. Don't give up, Elaine. Try again because there's a new system in place now. And I've given Elaine the link to one of our previous videos recently, I think from 2 weeks ago, the one where Chris was reporting live from outside the London consulate. So if you need to know what's going on there, then have a look at that video because everything opened up. And maybe for people in Elaine's situation who didn't actually get a response to her original emails, and she's tried and sent several emails, there was a backup, but now they're accepting new applications, and everything's moving a lot faster in London now. I've heard of people getting appointments really quickly, and then getting their visas really quickly too. So that is brilliant to hear. And thanks for the question, Elaine. And who was the other one? Let's see. This was Yvonne. And that was this one. She says, hello, Yvonne. I know I need to apply to Spanish consulate here in the UK with translated papers, but I'm unsure the actual amount per month required, which reasonable health insurance when on medication, and how do I go about securing a suitable rental? Maybe too many questions, but grateful for information. Well, what I would say to that, Yvonne, is we have many videos that talk about each individual question that you've asked there. Have a look for the non-lucrative visa, the latest update videos, and just search down the videos that we have on this channel. Subscribe to the channel as well. That'll really help, because then you'll be able to access the channel a lot better, and then you'll get notifications of when new videos are coming out, which are really relevant to you. So we haven't done one directly on health insurance yet, but we have talked about how good the Spanish health system is, and that may have some information on that one. Reasonable health insurance depends on different companies, but we do talk about that in the non-lucrative visa videos. If you're on medication and you have pre-existing conditions, I know it can be difficult, but there are companies who are much better at that than others. So good luck with that. If you have any more questions, then do ask below each individual video if your questions aren't answered. Okay, thanks, Yvonne. Sorry I can't answer that all today, because that would take me another half an hour, I think, to do that. But yeah, translated papers and all of that, the amount per month required, we talk about that. That's all about ePrem. And Chris actually talked about how much, 400% plus 100% plus 100% exactly when he was talking earlier, all about the amount that you need. So I hope we've answered most of that. Thank you, J. Rudy Organics, for your compliment there. And let's see, that is all the questions we have from Facebook. Thank you so much for asking all of these questions, and thanks for watching in on the chat and speaking. Next time with Chris in 2 weeks, we'll give you more vital information, and we will, do you know what? I don't know who we have on next week. It's all very exciting. I'm just trying to line up. There's one or two different possibilities. So watch out on the, subscribe to the channel and you'll find out. Or also what you can do, join the Facebook group. Join our Facebook group, which is there. Let's just get rid of that off the screen. The Facebook group is at facebook.com/groups/YouTooSpain. Very easy to find, or you can just search for YouTooSpain. Join us on that. We have a YouTooSpain page as well. You know, pages and groups on Facebook are different. They do slightly different things, but I started up both, and I don't know why, but I just basically post the same on both of those. But the group, I think, is more a closed group, so you can chat amongst yourselves on that one, and you can post things, and you can ask questions, and those questions will come through to me directly. You'll be able to get answers on there. And I get notifications as soon as you ask a question. So yeah, you can speak direct on there. So thank you for that. Let's hide that one again. And next week, as I say, we'll be back to our regular time of 9 o'clock if you're in the UK or Ireland. That's 10 a.m. if you're in Spain. And don't forget about, I don't know if you've noticed, but on today's show we didn't have Liz joining us on the chat. She's busy. There's a market on down in the town there, and she had to go and meet a lot of people there to talk about her business, her yoga and aromatherapy business. So which she can't start up yet because obviously she's got to wait for the residency process, which we've just talked about. She's UK, I'm Irish, so we were the imaginary couple number one in our scenario. No, we were number 3 because we're both working. So you can go to YouTube Yoga if you want. That's another Facebook group. That's Liz's channel. And it may be called Scattergood Yoga, and there's another one, Scattergood Aromatherapy. You can get free yoga classes on there, and they're really, really good, especially for people who've never done yoga before. So if you've never tried it and you think, oh no, it's really scary, I can't do any of that, I can't bend like that, it's not possible. Well, even people like me who have no flexibility in their body whatsoever, even I can do that kind of thing. So if that's what you're looking for, go to YouTube Yoga or Scattergood Yoga. I think she may have changed the name on there. And of course, the merchandise page where we have t-shirts and other goodies, and they're all on our merchandise page. All of the links can be found in the video description below. If you can't find the video description, by the way, then just ask on the Facebook group, and I'll tell you where it is. You just have to press more about this. It's very close to this point where I'm pointing, if you're on a computer or a PC, you know. So that's all for this week. Thank you so much, as usual, for watching, and thank you to all of those people who listen back afterwards. It's only usually a few people who watch live, but there are so many more of you who watch afterwards. Our videos are now into the thousands, so thank you once again for your support. That's all for this week, and peace and love, and I will see you next week. Bye bye for now.